Urgent public business.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I so move that we debate the report of the new Dunedin Hospital.
Speak now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
You're way.
Mr Speaker, today the government released a report, an independent expert readiness review on new Dunedin Hospital. And today the government, via two of the ministers, the Minister of Health and the Minister of Infrastructure, held a press conference in concert with this report and in reference to this report, but in essence to make their own announcements and the fact that they were no longer committed to building Dunedin Hospital as had previously been the case. In fact, before the election, Dr Shane Reti, then spokesperson for Health in opposition, campaigned rigorously and explicitly on the fact that not only would the National Party reverse some minor changes that Labor was making to the new Dunedin Hospital, but it would be fully funded in budget and that they would build Dunedin Hospital as always envisioned in the beginning. And today they poured cold water all over that. They have broken their promises not only to the people of Dunedin, the people of Otago, the rural communities of Otago, South Otago and Southland, throughout a huge and important regional part of this country, for no other reason than some basic cost saving. Mr Speaker, broken promises is a phrase that can be bandied around, but when something as blatant as this and something that considers the number one issue in Dunedin and the number one issue for people throughout the South is just dismissed as a cost-saving exercise, then I think the word broken promises is nothing short of incredibly accurate. The government backtracking on this promise to fully fund and build the new Dunedin Hospital as originally promised not only breaks this promise, but it leads to other consequences, particularly when we think about the erosion of health services, particularly when we think about the flow-on effects of that for the people in not only the South, but for the people, all people of New Zealand. And the audacity, the absolute audacity, those ministers had today to stand there at a press conference and pit other regions against the Dunedin region as a means by which to justify the fact that they are trying to save money. The audacity of saying that if we build Dunedin Hospital, as has already been designed, as has already been clinically approved and clinically picked over to the 9th, 10th, as has been value managed and reviewed and reviewed and reviewed, as has had cut all fat out of the system already, if we build you this hospital that we're pretty sure we can't make any more compromises on, then the poor people of Nelson, the poor people of Taranaki, the poor people of Hawke's Bay, the poor people of Tauranga will miss out on their regional health facilities as well. And how dare they couch this callous announcement, this cynical cost-saving exercise, by blaming it on other people and blaming it on people that may have a visceral reaction to that as if it's their own fault. Madam Speaker, Mr Speaker, I should say, we've talked about the health system erosions, but one of the things that the authors of this report, the New Dunedin Hospital Review, mentioned in their review, and I would like to acknowledge the authors. There were several reviewers, including the lead author, Robert Rust, who I know is an expert and has many years of huge contribution to health services across Australasia. And the report is interesting. It gives several recommendations across those various domains of governance, across the domains of scope and services, and across the domains of cost. And I must say, I was quite surprised that when I came to the cost recommendations, whilst almost all of it is redacted, so it's hard for us to make definitive assumptions and have definitive knowledge about the position, but it wasn't that emphatic. There was lots of words, there was lots of sentences that used the words probably and possibly and things like that. So I think for the government to catastrophise on the basis of this report and break its promise to the people of Dunedin and Otago is disgraceful. In Southland. South Island, essentially. But that's the theme, isn't it? Now, we also knew that there would be opposition from officials. We know that Whātua Ora were essentially strong-armed in presenting some options for cuts previously to this project, and none of them were particularly pretty. Health New Zealand's Southern leadership team had said any scope reduction of any form is ill-advised and will increase ongoing operational costs, reduce clinical functionality, decrease the likelihood of us realising the patient flow and efficiency benefits of the new Dunedin Hospital, and lead to higher costs in the medium to long term for Te Whātua Ora. Because that's the thing when you're trying to chop some costs out of the capex, isn't it? Sometimes it's the operational expenses that suffer, not to mention all the other health inefficiencies that flow on. Madam Speaker, Mr Speaker, I should say,
Thank you.
thinking about these very specific recommendations, and the first thing that came to mind when I looked at the report, which is considered, and it has some really good advice in it, is how are the people of Dunedin going to react about this? And I say Dunedin in this instance because I know on Saturday there is a rally being organised. They have endured and suffered through months now of uncertainty about what this new government had planned for this development. They have heard bits and pieces of information. They have heard the Minister of Health in particular, and sometimes the Minister of Infrastructure, talk out of both sides of their mouth, quite frankly, about promising a hospital for Dunedin, or promising, a service consideration for Dunedin without actually committing in the way that the previous government had. And the outcry from the people of Dunedin, because they won't be happy, and they know that they have one tool available to them at this moment, and that is their very, very strong, their very, very concerted, and their very, very unified voice. And I'm sure that if Christopher Luxton had visited Dunedin during the election campaign or during the election period, he may have had a taste of what that feels like. But given that this government has now chosen a slash and burn ideology project, instead of finding a way around this dilemma, I can only imagine that Shane Retty will be passing that information on to the Prime Minister about what he could expect when he visits Otago next time. Not really. So, Mr. Speaker, when we think about the impact on services, I think that we run a real possibility here of getting the worst of both worlds. The more we know, we absolutely know, the more we don't delay this project, the higher the costs become. When we look on the government's red list, which is now up to 20 projects nationally, and when we look and compare that to 6 months ago, the costs have gone up hugely. Of those same 18 comparable projects, none of which have moved off that red list, but the amount of money that is concerned with those projects has risen by $640 million already. So sitting around and reviewing this hospital again will not do anything other than cost more money, and that therefore leaves us in a situation where we have a lesser hospital that costs more than what we could have if we'd just done it properly in the first place. This reminds me of the ferries debacle, a new government coming and going, gosh, that's a big price tag, coincidentally around $3 billion, and saying we must scrap it, even though they had no plan B and no ability to do anything afterwards. Now, they've looked at this and they've gone, that's an awful lot of money, and have made a knee-jerk reaction to make the wrong decision and to put the whole project into a precarious state, let alone the community. Mr. Speaker, it's not only about broken promises, it's not only about the impact on services, it's not only about the community outcry, and I look forward to joining the people in Dunedin on Saturday as they vent their expressions and they have an opportunity to react to this government's announcements as they can on Saturday. But it is also about looking forward to the future. If the current Minister of Health can't get his head around an infrastructure program and an infrastructure plan and has to make these types of decisions, then I can only feel genuinely concerned for the people of Nelson and for the people of all those other regions, but not because Dunedin Hospital gets their hospital, but because this Minister is not competent to make the tough decisions and to do it when needed.
She's full on that one there, and it's interesting watching it on 1.5 speed. But to be honest, there's so much we wouldn't be able to sit there and cover it all. Troy, you're from the area. Please tell me some facts and figures about Dunedin Hospital and why a full-scale hospital development is needed.
Well, when it comes down to why it's needed, we so often see in the media them talking about the comparison of Dunedin's population size. Dunedin Hospital doesn't just service the Dunedin area. As Tracey said in her speech just then, it services the area of both Otago and Southland. South of Christchurch, there's only one major trauma centre, and that is Dunedin. And when we compare Dunedin, the area of Otago and Southland, I know a lot of North Islanders have not been down here before, but Otago and Southland combined is roughly 64,000 square kilometres, which is slightly larger than half of the entire North Island. And that area, with a population of 350,000 people, has only the one major trauma centre. So when it comes to building a hospital like this, the reason that we need something that large that actually works for the modern growing population is because otherwise the only alternative is to take them to Christchurch, which is another 4 hours further. So if they've come from Invercargill 2.5 hours south, then they've got so much further to go just to get medical care.
And I mean, also if we say you get snow, which I do know in the South Island, you have snow, you're not even going to get to, you might not even get from Invercargill to Dunedin, let alone to Christchurch.
Well, for dealing with the snow, we have what I found out is a uniquely New Zealand way of dealing with it, or originally was a uniquely New Zealand way of dealing with it, which is that down in Otago, we have more medical helicopters than the rest of the country combined.
Oh.
Yeah, so a lot of our health services actually run and conducted by those medical helicopters because getting people around as fast as possible matters. So if you do have a patient in Queenstown Hospital who needs clinical care, urgent clinical care that Queenstown can't provide, the fastest way to get them to Dunedin is going to be on their helicopter. So the helicopters come in incredibly important for dealing with things like the snow, the geography, the mountains, the forests, but also just the sheer distance that we have to travel.
Yes, and I definitely do know that considering where the airport is in relation to the city is like my brother got caught out the first time when he moved to Dunedin was a $100 cab ride. As an example, knowing where the airport is in relation to the city.
Well, this all might blow your mind, but there is actually a second airport in Dunedin that the medical helicopters use. It's closer to town, but it's still in Mosgiel.
Does that have the avgas refueling facilities? as
It
a
does have
former
refueling
employee?
facilities. It's also where the Fonterra freight base is.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's definitely. And now the other one is Otago University is now I think we did this just off the air. What is Otago University on the international rankings for a medical school?
So, as a university as a whole, Otago University at the moment is ranked as the 214th top university in the world. But when you consider just anatomy and physiology departments, they're ranked at number 40 for everywhere in the world. So they are one of the top ranked med schools in the world. Additionally, you've then got dentistry, which is also ranked as number 30. So you've got these very high ranking, very top quality facility training areas that are related to that hospital and do require that hospital to be up and working at a decent rate. Additionally, not only is it used as a teaching facility, but medicine and education is one of New Zealand's biggest exports. I believe it's now the 4th largest export for New Zealand. So making sure that it is of a international quality is really in New Zealand's best interest to make sure that we